Texas finally 1-0, finally riding for the brand, although Tom Herman did say they were 1-0 10 times last season.
Feinbaum, I'll give him like half a point. Dude,
You like okay. Feinbaum way too much.
Yeah, all right. I'm like
you're
the Feinbaum of the show.
By the way, that looks Ohio State. Is that an omen? Give me that Longhorn hat.
Oh man!
Hook him, baby.
All right, he's pulling the torso.
Hello and welcome back into the 1-0 Sports Show for the first time in 6 months. It has been a long time. We're back. Sports are back. Texas football is going to be back playing next weekend, or this weekend, I should say. It's been a long break, but we are so glad to be back with y'all. So thankful that y'all stuck with us through this long break. And to get the show started, we know that it's a tough time for a lot of people, but we want to start just saying something that we're all thankful for with sports returning. So Robert, we'll let you start with that.
Yeah, I mean, a lot to be thankful for. What I'm thankful for the most is that I get to be here and argue with you guys about sports. It's been half a year since I've gotten to tell Thomas that he has a terrible, terrible take on the NBA or whatever it is, college football. Sports is the great unifier in society, and you know, in this pandemic and in everything that's going on right now, it's always the little things, and sports is really a great unifier. And I'm really excited to get back to arguing about the ins and outs of football, basketball, hockey, whatever it is, you name it. Everything about it is just so great, and I'm excited to be here with you guys. So that's what I'm thankful for.
Yeah, certainly I'm thankful for getting to argue with you. I was looking back at some old clips of us going back and forth about Cowboys stuff, and I'm sure that this season we're going to have a lot of debates there. For me, what I'm most thankful for is overtime playoff games. We've gotten some incredible overtime playoff games, both in the NHL and the NBA. You had the Raptors and the Celtics the other night in an incredible double overtime game. There's nothing quite like the feeling of that overtime, where especially, you know, in a game like hockey where it's sudden death, just the emotions are running high and it's so much fun. Adam, how about you?
Yeah, happy to be back with y'all and happy to be getting 1-0 back going again. But what I'm most thankful for is fantasy football and fantasy drafts. You know, after going 6 months without any sports, it's just nice to be able to watch football on TV again, just be able to argue and have fun with your friends about who can have the best fantasy team. So looking forward to getting the NFL kicked off and college football kicked off, and it should be a fun year.
Yeah, first NFL game tonight, Texans and Chiefs, or yesterday night, I should say. We're pre-recording this, Texans and Chiefs. But it's just great to have football back and have sports back. Speaking of what's back, who's hot and who's not, bringing the segment back. Robert, we're going to start with you. Who's hot?
Well, this has been 6 months coming, but who's hot is the defending NBA champion, the Toronto Raptors. They are staying alive, sending a shout out to the Bee Gees. You know, tied 3-3, backs against the wall. You think they're going to go down 3-0. Instead, hit that incredible shot in Game 3. And I think this is all proven that Kyle Lowry has to be one of the most massively underrated players in NBA history. He has the ability to make plays when it counts to help the Raptors really stay at that championship level. And they have a bunch of awesome guys pretty much stepping into that role that Kawhi Leonard had last year. I think they can definitely make another run at the title. I think right now, hot take of the week, they're probably looking like my title favorite.
Wow. They did have that big double overtime win. I tell you what, Nick Nurse, talk about the job he's done. You lose Kawhi over the offseason, still has the team in a position with a Game 7 victory to be going to the Eastern Conference Finals. Who's not for you, Robert?
Well, who's not is college football. And, of course, we can't talk about the season starting really in earnest in a couple days without talking about the fact that 2 of the 5 Power 5 conferences are not going to be playing. And you know, I am disappointed. Players are disappointed. You have a smaller schedule. A lot of those non-revenue sports are, you know, threatened right now, maybe getting cut, maybe all of the money fiscally it's all become a mess, and uncertainty of really how this season is going to end. What's most disappointing for me with college football is that it kind of throws this phrase student athlete ultimately into question when the players have to play in a pandemic for revenue reasons. And listen, I know the players, I know the coaches, I know everybody wants those players to be out there playing, but ultimately this is an economic decision as much as it is about loving the game of football. And I mean, I don't know about the fact that if we're playing all of these games, if you can really call these people student athletes, and that's why college football is my who's not.
Yeah, it's certainly a tough topic there. Adam, who's hot for you?
Gonna go to some baseball out in Georgia with the Atlanta Braves. They got shut out 8-0 on Tuesday, but they came roaring back on Wednesday night. They put up 29 runs against the Marlins, which was the second most in modern MLB history, only behind when the Rangers put up 30 back in 2007. But what about the night for Adam Duvall? He hit a 2-run homer, a 3-run homer, and then capped it all off with a grand slam. A great night for the Braves, a nearly historic night. And I don't normally see that type of run performance in the MLB, so they're definitely my who's hot.
Yeah, as a Braves fan myself, I was a little surprised when I checked my ESPN app and saw 29 runs. Was not expecting that. What about who's not for you?
Yeah, I'm going to go back to the NBA playoffs here. We're going to go with the NBA referees for the who's not. There have been too many ticky-tacky fouls and technical calls throughout this playoffs that have really taken the spotlight away from on the floor to the referees. We saw Kristaps Porzingis get thrown out in Game 1 for a very questionable, a minor kind of scuffle with Marcus Morris, which started off with Luka and Morris getting into it. And then his first technical was just him getting upset with a call. And then you go to the Bucks and the Heat, the ending of Game 2 between those two, and you have two very questionable calls about players with minimal contact interfering with their shooter's space. I understand the concern that you don't want the shooter landing awkwardly on a leg of an opposing player and potentially hurting themselves. But when you have 4 seconds, and then with Jimmy Butler at the buzzer left, when you have minimal contact like that, I think in the playoffs in such a crucial moment that you might have to think twice before you blow that whistle, just knowing the impact it could have on these team seasons.
Yeah, you certainly know sports are back when we're having to talk about problems with refs. Speaking of coming back, we'll be right back after this break. We have an interview with Isaiah Ramirez. He is writer for the UTEP Prospector. Plus, we're going to start looking at the college football season, NBA bubble awards, and more. Stick around. Welcome back into the Want to Know Sports Show. Now joining us from the UTEP Prospector, which is the UTEP student paper, sports writer for them, Isaiah Ramirez. Isaiah, it's good to have you on the show. Before we get to our questions, I just want to say I feel a little connection to UTEP. Over the summer on NCAA 14, started a dynasty at UTEP as the OC, went 10 wins. So I think there's a little connection here.
All right, that's good to hear because that's the most wins I think I've heard a football team here has had in a long time. So that's great, man. I did that myself. But, I've always wanted to win a natty. That's the only way I could win a natty with UTEP. So that's funny.
All right. So first question from me, what would you say are UTEP's strengths and weaknesses coming into this game?
Well, one of the strengths for sure has to be their young offense. They got a trio that did really well the last game. And the quarterback, Gavin Hardison, they have running back, Deion Hankins, and their wide receiver, Jacob Cowing, all very young. You got 3 sophomores, actually, 2 red shirts and one, true sophomore. And but, man, they really stepped up. Hankins, who's actually from here, an El Paso product, he ran for over 113 rushing yards, 2 touchdowns. And, coming in, he wasn't even the starting running back. He did get most of the carries due to our starting running back having this nagging injury. But Hardison stepped up. He played 3 games last season. And then end up redshirting. That way we can, preserve him for the long term. But yeah, definitely the strengths has to be that the young offensive group. Cowing as well, great wide receiver, tremendous speed, and Cowing and Hankins were the first duo from UTEP to rush for over 100 yards and had 100 yards receiving since 13. Back when we had NFL product now, Aaron Jones, as a lot of people might heard of from now. But yeah, definitely our offense and our defense is very young. We got a lot of JUCO products coming in. They did get off to a rough start, but definitely got to say the offense is one of our strengths for sure.
You talk about a lot of that young talent out there offensively. Which UTEP player do you think can cause the Longhorns the most problems on Saturday night?
I would have to just say Hankins. Hardison, I believe he's gonna have some rough start to get off with in this game. He's coming into the Memorial Stadium. Guys got out there. Obviously there's not gonna be a large fan base, but just being in that stadium, he's gonna have some type of nerves. Once again, he's a young quarterback, but I think Hankins is gonna be a guy that's gonna cause a lot of damage. Had a tremendous offseason, adding muscle to his frame. He's already got tremendous speed. I remember one play against SFA, he ran over like 3 guys, and I'm no way comparing the SFA defense to the Longhorn defense, but if that's any taste of what he's going to give on Saturday, it's going to be pretty exciting for him.
So kind of a normal Saturday non-conference game, except for the elephant in the room, which is the fact that it's going to be 25% capacity. How do you think that's going to affect this matchup specifically, with there being a limited amount of fans in the stands?
For UTEP, I'm not throwing any kind of, shade our way or nothing like that, but we're not used to having large fan base at our games anyway, so it's not going to be a whole lot of difference. But I think just coming in, these guys they're going to want to prove something. I know a lot of us are thinking it's going to be a, large underdog game for them, and it's going to be a deficit. I think they're coming in as a 42-point underdog. So they're going to try to, prove a lot of doubters wrong. And luckily, we do have one game under our belt. Texas can't say the same. So, but one of the deficits for us is that, as far as scouting goes, I remember head coach Dana Demo talking about this. It's kind of hard to scout a team who hasn't had a game this season. You can look at all the film from last season, but just going into this game, I think having limited capacity fans is not going to be too much of a difference. But just being in that stadium, as I alluded to earlier, it's going to be a great experience for them as well.
Yeah, you talked about the UTEP scouting. Who would you say is probably one player on Texas that UTEP is pretty worried about in this game?
I would have to say maybe just I know you guys have a wide receivers that you guys had to kind of repackage after losing your top 2 receivers after this season. I would probably have to say, just off the top of my head, it would probably have to be let me think off the top of my head. Let me look at these. Sorry for the delay. I'm just kind of looking over the wide receiver. But I know you guys have, I can't remember off the top of my head. I know his name starts with a C. Can't think of his name off the top of my head right now, but he's a very speedy wide receiver that you guys got out there. You might have to help me with that one. but
Jake Smith, who is probably the number 1 receiver, is not, I believe, will not be playing in the game. But Tariq Black is a transfer from Michigan, who supposedly had a really good fall camp.
Yeah, I let's see. Yeah, that's probably the ones I have to go with right now. Didn't get a chance to look over too much of your wide receivers, but I know, you guys always repackage some great ones out there, so probably have to go with those guys.
Obviously, UTEP coming into this one's a big underdog, but what are going to be the keys for the Miners on Saturday night to try and keep this game close and competitive, and maybe give UTEP a shot heading into the fourth quarter?
They did start off really slow against SFA. They got up to a 14-3 deficit. Just looking at those guys, man, they, just simple plays, which is bubble screens. And if the receivers from SFA can do that, I'm kind of worried about what UT can do. So definitely just, defending those type of just simple plays. And, we did have a very shortened off season, definitely due to the positive tests, and, they weren't allowed to go out there and get as much practices as they needed to. But definitely just getting off to a better start. And obviously giving Hankins the ball, that guy, I don't know if he's going to make as much of an impact against UT as he did against SFA. I hope so for our sake, but definitely just giving him the ball and making sure our defense that, we go based off of our new defense that we implemented. Unlike you guys, you guys switched from a 4-3 to a 3-4. We switched from a 3-4 to a 4-3. And, making sure that we implement that going in, because from what I've seen, it doesn't look like it's as perfected or just as structured as they wanted it to be. So definitely making sure that, that package looks good. And just going off of that, maybe the last thing, just have to go to making sure that the second half is strong, just like they did against SFA, because, you can't just have one half that's playing good. You don't want to have any comeback ball going into a team like UT.
So expanding the scope from Austin, Texas this weekend, looking at the total college football landscape, do you think the decision that the Big 12 or the Big 10, and the Pac-12 made to not have their season as of this moment, do you think that was the right choice, or do you think it will end up being seen as a mistake since the other 3 Power 5 conferences are set to go ahead and play the season?
You know, the whole college football season is just up in limbo for the most part. You know, it's just very, from what I understand, you know, not that many teams are playing, obviously. And as we alluded to, I mean, it's kind of hard when you cancel one conference, you know, as far as, you know, bowl games go as well. You know, a lot of, you know, most bowl games, you got Pac-12 going against, you know, besides the major playoff, you got Pac-12 going against, you know, ACC, what have you. So, I mean, if you cancel those conferences, it just kind of leaves those games up in limbo. But to answer your question, I think they made the right decision, you know, for now. You know, the NCAA, in my opinion, should have just from the beginning of the season made a, you know, standard answer just for all conferences. You know, either you're going to play or you're not going to. It's just kind of hard when you have one conference playing another conference, you know, that's not playing. You know, for UTEP, we're not in bowl games in a long time anyway, so we don't have to worry about that. But I think they just should have made a definitive answer just for the beginning. So it's just kind of hard at this point when you're already, you know, the second week going in saying, you know, either you have games or you don't because season's already kicked off.
Big question that has to be asked. Can we get a score or just a prediction of who you think is going to win? And then do you think that there's a chance that Texas covers the 42-point spread?
I'm really being optimistic here. You know, it's been a couple of years since we played UT. Definitely don't have, as I mentioned earlier, running back power like Aaron Jones. You know, Hankins, as I feel like I've mentioned a lot of times during this, he's going to live up to that, but it's only his second season. If we can get off to the right start and not make too many careless mistakes, get the, you know, early game jitters out, I believe we can maybe get within maybe 3 touchdowns. I don't see us taking a lead at all. I'll say that right now. But covering the 42-point spread, you know, I think I gave a final prediction score with the SB Nation podcast that you guys have out there. I give a final score of 42-21. So I'm going to stick with that, of course, in UT's favor. I'll stick with that, and, you know, that's probably my final score prediction.
That's a good score pick. So no field goals. No field goals in this one.
No, yeah.
We can make a prop bet on that one.
Last game, but no, I don't. Yeah, good point there. Yeah, and I don't see any field goals.
Okay, and then let's be optimistic here that the college football season is able to finish. Who do you see taking the title this year in college football?
It's kind of hard when you have, you know, the Big Ten out. I definitely want to see Ohio State, you know, a big Justin Fields guy. Definitely wanted to see him have a Heisman campaign. That's hard. From what I understand, ACC is still in it, right? We still got Clemson going out there. So I think, you know, Clemson, you still got Trevor Lawrence. That's just my pick to win the whole thing. Last season, they definitely got dismantled. So I just want to see him come back. And, you know, I'm a big Trevor Lawrence fan too. So I want to see Clemson take the whole thing. And Dabo get what I think that would be his second natty or third, once around there. So probably Clemson.
Awesome. Well, Isaiah, thanks so much for joining us and giving us some insight into UTEP football. For those of y'all watching this, make sure you check out the UTEP Prospector and get all their coverage of the game afterwards. But thanks, Isaiah.
No problem. Thank you guys for having me. I appreciate it.
Welcome back into the 1-0 Sports Show. Now we are going to look at the college football season as a whole, and Adam and Robert are going to help give us a preview for what we have to watch for. So first of all, I'll ask this to you, Adam, first. How big would you say the asterisk is on this season?
I think when you look back 5-10 years down the road, I think there's going to be a pretty big asterisk. I don't think you can really avoid it when 2 of the Power 5 conferences don't play. You're losing out on premier teams like Ohio State, like Michigan, like Oregon, like USC. They won't have a chance. Ohio State was probably going to be one of the top 2 or 3 favorites for the national championship. So, but I do think this season, once we get into it, there's not going to be, you know, thinking about the asterisk or whatever. When you get to the playoffs in January, there's not going to be a thought about the asterisk. It's going to be just as much the teams and players playing. But I think historically, there's always going to be kind of a shadow over this season.
I mean, yeah, I think the whole year of 2020 is going to have a big asterisk over it. So everything that took place within that year is obviously going to have the same thing. And that definitely does not exclude college football in that regard. But I think that I agree with Adam a little bit here is that there's still plenty of good competition to feel like this year counts. I mean, of course, you lose the big contenders, Ohio State, Penn State, even some sleeper picks out in the Pac-12, even though they haven't really been, you know, nationally relevant for the entirety of the college football playoff. But Now they're just out of it from the get-go. I think apart from that, though, you're going to have these guys that are really going to be playing for what they feel like is something more. I think the fact that this is such a different season, the fact that the camaraderie within the team's locker room has to be deeper. You're going to see these older teams kind of, I think, rally around and really try to get that leadership and kind of keep the team together, even when you have, this kind of tumultuous season. Nothing's all the same. The fans aren't in the seats. And I think whoever wins this, it's probably going to be a triumph that's probably sweeter than the average national championship, ironically, even though, basically half the teams aren't playing this year in the Power Five.
Yeah, y'all both bring up the point about a lot of good teams not playing with the Big Ten and the Pac-12, not playing this season. But what that opens up the door for is a lot of sleeper teams, under the radar teams that could potentially sneak in. So Robert, we'll start with you, but who do you think are some teams that might not be at the top right now at the beginning of the season, but could make their way into the playoff by the end?
Well, I agree with you totally. And it's very interesting now without the Big Ten and the Pac-12 is that you are almost guaranteed to have two teams from one conference in the college football playoff. And of course, when you think of two teams from one conference in the college football playoff, what conference do you think of? You think of the SEC. So for sure going to be a sleeper pick. I think whoever comes out of the SEC West, if they're 11-1, if you have an 11-1 Auburn or a second place team, I think you could definitely see them make it in over the loser who wins the SEC East and loses the SEC championship game. I think that the team that you're going to have to look for, though, and necessarily some people might not say this is really a sleeper, but I think Florida, because of the hype that you have for them, because, everybody's already seeing this as a sleeper pick, and it's like, is it really a sleeper pick if everyone's saying it's a sleeper pick? But Florida's very talented. They've made a lot of great strides, and they look like they're going to be able to own the SEC East. And this year, it turns out that you might not even have to win the SEC to get a very good chance at going to the college football playoff, just because how much the committee loves the Southeastern Conference.
And Paul Feinbaum of the week, Robert, is back. Two SEC teams maybe making the college football playoff. Adam, who's your sleeper pick?
Yeah, I like Florida, but I think the Big 12 could be wild this year. I think there's going to kind of be a void at the top with Oklahoma losing guys like Jalen Hurts, CeeDee Lamb. They lose their best defender, Kenneth Murray. One of their star running backs, Trey Sermon, opted out. So I think there's a big void right there. And I think two teams that could step up to is one with Texas, led by Ellinger and the loaded running back room and the defense. But also Oklahoma State, they have a trio of players. They got their quarterback, Spencer Sanders, back. And they have star receiver Tyler Wallace and Chuba Hubbard out of the backfield. So this is an Oklahoma State team that's really loaded, and Stillwater is always a tough place to play. So I think the Big 12 is a conference to watch maybe produce a sleeper. And if it's ever going to happen, I think this is the year where a group of 5 team could sneak in. So watch for UCF and Cincinnati out of the American, especially if the Big 12 goes wild and teams start beating each other. And suddenly you might have a 2 or 3 loss Big 12 champion. I think that could really open the door for a team from the American to sneak in.
Yeah, I saw that Desmond Howard on College Game Day last week picked Cincinnati in the college football playoff, which is a little crazy, but that would be really fun. And I know those group of 5 teams, especially the American Athletic Conference, has been dying to try to get a team in there. But obviously, we've mentioned it is a weird year. We're going to 10-game conference schedules, obviously, for the Big 12 because there's only 10 teams. They're playing 9 games plus 1 non-conference. But the SEC, who won't be starting for another week or 2, they're playing 10 games all in conference. Adam, we'll start with you. Do you think that this is something that should stay after this year?
No, I think there's no way this will ever get adopted in a normal year, just because you lose so much of the allure of the non-conference matchups and of the rivalry games too. You look at like Florida, Florida State. You look at Notre Dame, Michigan, USC, Notre Dame. Even last year, the marquee matchup between like Texas and LSU, that's not possible if you don't have those non-conference games, and it's great early season test for teams. Yes, there's always going to be a cupcake or 2 in the non-conference schedule, but with the amount of marquee matchups that it provides us that you normally wouldn't see until bowl season, I think that non-conference is here to stay for the long haul.
I agree with Adam. I mean, you would have to be almost out of your mind to think that Clemson and South Carolina are just going to never play again after this year. But to get to the point of should it be adopted, I honestly don't even think so. I think the SEC conferences like that look at playing a lot of conference games as almost sort of auto cannibalism, where you're just kind of hurting your own chances, especially if you have a lot of great teams and the games are really, really close. So you can have a lot of parity there, and one of your teams can end up getting knocked out by a team that's really not that good in the SEC on any given week. So I think that this 10-game conference schedule really works well for this specific year, and it kind of harkens back to the older conferences like the Big Eight, the Southwest Conference, which is really interesting. But I think the new model that we've adopted with non-conference games and conference games is it's really good. It's standard, and it really helps those smaller programs, especially with the funding.
Yeah, that's a good point. Although I know a lot of us are looking forward to A&M having to play 10 SEC games this season.
I am.
Final question. This is something we do every year. We don't have the board, though. We don't have the stickers. There's no Velcro. We're not getting up. We're not putting the teams. But we got to do our college football playoff predictions. Robert, who do you have in your college football playoff right now?
Well, with the stock market the way it is, I'm taking the sure thing. I'm taking the Treasury bond backed by the full faith and trust in the United States government. This one, full faith and trust in Saban and the SEC. I'm taking two teams from the SEC, of course, with the Paul Feinbaum of the week. I'm back. Alabama, Georgia, and then I think you're going to have Clemson. And I think Spencer Rattler's going to make great strides, and you're going to see Oklahoma be able to rebound even from the losses in talent. They're going to basically re-up once again.
Adam, what's your college football playoff?
Yeah, I'm going to actually kind of disagree with Robert. I think 2020 is going to continue its unpredictability. Not so much that Clemson and Alabama miss out. Those two are definite. There's no way Trevor Lawrence is missing out, and you can't doubt Nick Saban. I also agree with the two SEC teams, but I think this year is Florida's year. They have Kyle Trask back, and they have a loaded defense with 9 starters. And we've seen Dan Mullen do more with less with what he did with Mississippi State. They were number 1 for a time. So I think he can get them in. And I think the Big 12 is going to be crazy. I don't think Oklahoma is going to be a college football playoff team this year, just as they adjust to all the talent they lose. So I think this actually provides an opportunity. I'm going to either go way up with this, or this is going to go down in flames. But I think this is going to provide the opportunity for Texas to sneak into the playoffs just with that Big 12 title, because there's no competition from the Big 10 or the Pac-12, and I don't see a group of 5 team getting in. I think they'll probably end up beating each other up down there in the American. So I think Texas might sneak in as that final team just because of the void left by Oklahoma.
I like that. I like that pick, Adam. I'm going to have to go the same with the first 2 teams, as y'all said. It's just impossible to bet against Alabama and Clemson. They're just so stacked top to bottom, the best coach and the best players. They're 1 and 2. My number 3, I'm gonna take your pick, Adam. We're gonna go Texas at 3. Texas at 3, and I like your Florida pick. I think that they will be in contention, but I'm gonna go crazy with number 4. I think the ACC gets 2 teams in, and I think Mac Brown takes the North Carolina Tar Heels in the 4 seed. And that's my top 4.
I said I had hot take of the day. That's hot take of the century. North Carolina in. If you get that right, I think you win. You win like every prediction game forever. If North Carolina goes in, I mean, I don't even know. That's so outlandish. I want to put something on the line if it happens, but it really might. I'm not going to doubt.
If you want to throw some cash down on if that happens.
Oh, not cash. Definitely. I do not bet against Mac Brown as a Texas fan. No way.
It would be crazy. I mean, it would be crazy. But Sam Howell's a great quarterback, and I want to see Mac Brown in the playoffs. That's the only reason. But how much fun? Then you have Texas and North Carolina upset Alabama, Clemson playing the national championship. Dream scenario.
So Texas has to run the table, in your opinion, to get to the 3 spot, right?
Probably, yeah. So probably you have North Carolina, you have undefeated Clemson, undefeated Alabama, although Alabama could lose 1. Undefeated Texas, 1 loss, North Carolina. That's my college football playoff.
That's way more interesting than mine. I hope we get yours. I hope we get your playoff.
We got the clickbait, and hopefully this is what happens. Speaking of crazy, the NBA bubble has been all sorts of fun, all sorts of crazy, all sorts of wild. And when we come back, we're going to be giving out awards for the bubble. Stick around. Welcome back into the 1-0 Sports Show. We are going to talk about the bubble. Everybody's been talking about the bubble. It was a genius idea throwing a bunch of NBA players into Disney World, staying in the same hotels. They're fishing out on the pond, and then they get to play some basketball. So we have some awards we're going to give out up to this point in the playoffs. We're going to start with who has been the MVP of the bubble. Robert, who's been the MVP so far?
So remember, folks, this is strictly the bubble. And if we say strictly the bubble, there's been nobody better than Jimmy Butler from the Miami Heat. He's taken them to new levels, leading the team that already has those established veterans like Andre Iguodala. They're combining it with that fresh new talent like Tyler Hero. You see Bam Adebayo out there. They're getting buckets every single night. And I know I said earlier that there was a different team in the East that was looking very good right now. But I'd take the Heat, honestly, as another team that you need to look at that could make a deep run in the NBA Finals against whoever they're playing. This team is stacked, they're solid, and that's all because of Jimmy Butler's leadership ability that I think has been a little bit underrated. And, you know, some people have, I think some analysts on Twitter have said Jimmy Butler is not a team player, all this. I think he's a great team leader, and I think he's getting it done for the Heat. And for that reason, he's my NBA bubble MVP.
He certainly stepped up at the right time for the Heat in his leadership role. Adam, who's your MVP?
Well, Jimmy Butler has been great, but there's been one who I think was better than him, and that's Damian Lillard. You get late in the fourth quarter with Dame time. He came in clutch so many times for the Trailblazers. The last 3 regular season games in the bubble, he scored 51, 61, and 42 points. And then he led them past the Grizzlies in the playoff game before taking game 1 from the Lakers. So his range from 3 and his performance from behind the arc has been a big reason why the Trailblazers even got into the playoffs. You have to remember they entered the bubble 5 games behind the Grizzlies, and he got them into the 8th seed. So I think that clutch play to take a team like that on his back and carry them, I think. And, you know, they were going right up against the Lakers. They had a couple of key injuries, and that kind of cost them. But I'll give Damian Lillard the MVP by a hair over Jimmy Butler.
And Dame was injured for game 5 against the Lakers. Do you think, Adam, that if he's healthy that they could maybe have made it close and pushed it to a game 7 there?
Yeah, I think definitely. Well, but and they lost Zach Collins. Robert's shaking his head, but they lost Zach Collins too. So I think the Trailblazers, you get Dame Hall, you get C.J. McCollum, you have the experience of Melo. I think that's a team that could have really gone with the Lakers had they stayed healthy.
I do agree with that. But I think only Damian Lillard would not have helped them in Game 5.
That's fair. Speaking of some surprises, who has been surprise player of the bubble? Adam, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I think going off the Heat, we talked about them earlier. It's been Tyler Hero, the rookie out of Kentucky. His three-point shooting, he's coming clutch with so many late threes. He's been averaging 13 points a game in the Bucks series, and he made 14 of those three-pointers. So I think that consistency from him from behind the arc has been surprising for a rookie. And that sharp shooting is going to be crucial. Whoever they get in the Eastern Conference Finals between the Raptors and Celtics, they're going to need his scoring ability late in games, especially when you see how close that Raptors-Celtics series has been. So he's been a surprising player so far, and I think he'll continue to surprise as we move on to the Eastern Conference Finals.
Yeah, Adam, you're taking the youth because Tyler Hero is about, I think, 13 days younger than I am or older than I am.
I think he's going to be the first ever player born in the 2000s to play in the conference finals.
He is. I am going to take a veteran for my surprise player, somebody who's kind of brought back shades of their old self, and that would be the Lakers' Rajon Rondo. Did not play at all until the Houston series in the bubble. He was playing okay during the season, but wasn't really a huge integral part of the team. But he's been looking like the Rondo from the Celtics back in the late 2000s in the way he's been running the show as the point guard, playing within himself, facilitating the ball, even knocking down some huge three-pointers late in the fourth in these games. I think without Rajon Rondo, the Lakers would be looking way worse in their series against the Rockets. He's that last little kick that they needed after game 1. You looked at game 1 of the Lakers versus the Rockets and you were like, LeBron needs to turn it up. The bench needs to turn it up or they are in serious trouble. Game 2, Rajon Rondo and the rest of the bench for that matter came out and showed out. And I think that Rajon Rondo could lift this team over the hump and maybe into being a championship contender. And for that reason, I think Rajon Rondo has basically come from nowhere to lead this team to a potential title.
Yeah, when you think about the Lakers, you think Anthony Davis, LeBron James, but Rondo had some big games in the last couple games against the Rockets. On the flip side of biggest surprise, we got to get to the biggest disappointment. There's certainly been a lot of disappointments I know ESPN was disappointed. We kind of know that they set up the playoffs to try to get Ja and Zion in that playing that game. They couldn't get that. But Robert, what's been your biggest disappointment?
Well, they almost got the Phoenix Suns. We know how much they are a huge market team. But for me, the biggest disappointment was the Milwaukee Bucks. The number one seed, obviously, the team with 60 wins. And even before Giannis went down, they really kind of looked flat against the Heat. And that's no knock on the Heat. The Heat, of course, we've talked about Hero and Butler in the last couple of questions. They're looking great. But that series should have been a lot closer with the talent that the Bucks had. And you really saw them kind of figure it out after Giannis was out. Chris Middleton kind of started stepping up, but at that point it was too little too late. And it kind of calls into question, is this Bucks team still one or two pieces away from a title? And if so, how are they going to get to that last step? Because Giannis, it looks like he's developed into a huge superstar already. It looks as though he's ready to win the title. It's all about how are the Bucks going to take that last little step, that last little it factor that kind of changes you from a number one team in the East, number two team in a conference to really a title contender and the title favorite. So that was disappointing for me to see them go down like they did. And I think they should have really expected at least an Eastern Conference Finals appearance.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting offseason in Milwaukee for sure. Adam, what about for you?
Yeah, for me, I'm going to stay in the East. Some of those Eastern first-round series were not competitive at all. And I think the biggest disappointment out of all those were the 76ers. I think trust the process might be dead. Brent Brown's been out after 7 years in charge there. And so just kind of assimilating, like they've kind of hit a rock bottom now. Now they need to figure out where they're going to go next. They had two-star big men. You have Embiid and Al Horford, and you just expect them to be more competitive against the Celtics. They were only 500 in the regular season in the bubble once it restarted. And so, they took Toronto, the eventual NBA champs, to 7 games last year. It was only Kawhi Leonard's crazy bouncing shot that went in at the buzzer that knocked them out. So to go from that to a first-round sweep is really disappointing from the 76ers point of view. And it's going to be interesting who they choose as the next coach and where they choose to go from there.
Yeah, that was honestly for me probably the biggest surprise was just how flat they showed up in these playoffs. Now, as we mentioned earlier, the bubble has more than just basketball going on. The players are at Disney World. They get a fish, they get a bowl, but they're not allowed to leave. So for this next award, who would y'all say is most likely to leave the bubble and leave quarantine? Adam, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I've got to go with J.R. Smith on this one. I don't think he would do it on purpose. I think he might just simply forget the rules, like he forgot the score in Game 1 of the NBA Finals. So I think the Lakers definitely probably have LeBron babysitting JR, making sure he's always reminding JR of the rules. So that way you don't get that picture recreated where LeBron is screaming at JR after Game 1.
I'm going to go with the Rockets and Daniel House. I mean, it's ongoing right now, seeing what the NBA is going to do with the evidence that they got supposedly from the snitch line, as it's called so eloquently by Mr. Rob Perez on Twitter. I would say that he is probably the most likely to break quarantine and leave the bubble for the night, probably because he did break quarantine and leave the bubble. So I will say, though, on a more serious note, I cannot believe how the NBA has gotten the bubble to this extent. I think it's really awesome how they're now bringing in some of the families, some of the friends of the players. I think that's something that the players really needed, something that I think we all really need is, somebody there with us in like a physical level when it's all on Zoom. I'm not even with you guys right now filming the show. So I mean, shout out to the NBA for giving us this awesome product. And but with all that said, Daniel House definitely most likely to break quarantine.
Yeah, maybe we could get ourselves a 1-0 bubble. I don't know if we have the budget quite to go to rent out Disney World, but maybe we could find some money and do that.
Clark Field or something.
Clark Field, yeah, whatever it takes. The best part of basketball, though, of course, is the dunks. So we got to know, what is the best dunk of the bubble so far? Robert, we'll go to you.
I'm going to go with Michael Porter Jr. over Montrezl Harrell in Game 3 of their current series against the LA Clippers. That's Michael Porter Jr. from the Denver Nuggets. His dad was in there in attendance if you go back and watch it. And, I mean, I think that, the Nuggets, they're really looking great as far as what they have. But, I mean, if you need Jamal Murray and Nikola Jokic to be at full strength every game, I mean, they're not going to be able to do that. No one's able to be at 100% full strength. But Michael Porter Jr., he's got hops, and he showed them off there. That's the best dunk of the bubble so far, by far.
He's overall, he's played, talk about surprise player, he's played really well in the bubble. Adam, what's been the best dunk for you?
I'm going to go to the Eastern Conference for my choice. That Celtics-Raptors series, which is the gift that keeps on giving. But in Game 5, Jaylen Brown absolutely obliterated OJ Anunoby early on in that game and really set the tone for what was the Celtics runaway. So it's going to be a fun Game 7 watching those two go at it. This series has provided so many great moments, including that incredible dunk by Brown, just the way he got off the floor with the vertical and just absolutely went right over Anunoby. So it should be a fun Game 7 and hopefully some more moments like that.
Yeah, Game 7 certainly will be exciting. Speaking of Game 7, when we come back, we're going to have all your picks, NBA, college football, NFL, for the weekend. Stick around. You don't want to miss it. Last time this morning, welcome back into the 1-0 Sports Show. It's the most exciting part of the show. We have our predictions for the weekend. And like I said earlier, we have NBA, we have college football, we have NFL. Next week, we'll probably have to add an NHL just to get another sport in there because sports are just going crazy right now, and it's kind of fantastic. First game we have, this is on Friday, Celtics facing off against the Raptors. Series tied 3-3, Game 7, winner to the Eastern Conference Finals. Robert, who do you have?
Well, first to start out, this is crazy that I am picking an NBA playoff game on September 10th, now September 11th, tomorrow. So, I mean, wow. But I'm going to get into it. The Raptors, as I said, I think they're my favorite. It was my hot take of the day before you came in with the North Carolina stuff. Raptors in Game 7, I think they're going to look like the best team in the East. So I think the Celtics kind of blown their shot. I'm taking the Raptors Game 7.
Adam, what about you?
Not so fast, Robert. I've got the Celtics in this one. I like the combination of Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, Kemba Walker. I think that Brad Stevens is not going to let this team go from 2-0 up to falling 4-3 in Game 7. I think the Celtics are going to come out ready to play. They showed a lot of fight in that double overtime game. Both teams are going to have to, recover quickly. But I've got the Celtics. I think their young talent propels them past the Raptors.
Good pick. Good pick with that one. Celtics not only going to win this one, they're going to win this one, gear up, and get ready for another 7-game series, calling it right now, with the Heat in the Eastern Conference Finals. Next game to pick, Nuggets and the Clippers. Game 5, Clippers lead 3-1. They won. Game 4, Adam, will go to you. Who do you got?
I've got the Clippers in this one. I think they just simply have too much talent with Paul George, Kawhi Leonard. I think that you saw them eventually, the Mavericks kind of ran out of steam against the Clippers. I think the Nuggets are going to do the same here. I've got the Clippers. I think they finish this series off in 5.
Robert?
I'm going to agree with you, Adam. I wanted to hit you with a not so fast, but so fast. The Clippers are going to finish this one so fast. They're up 3-1. They have all the momentum. Kawhi Leonard not going to let this one go to a Game 6. He has the finisher ability. I got the Clippers.
Man, y'all set me up for a double not so fast. I do think the Clippers are going to win this series. I think they'll win it in 6, but I think the Nuggets have enough fight left in them that they're going to win this game and take it to a Game 6. Next game, this is on Saturday, Rockets, Lakers, Game 5, depending on what happens Thursday night. Currently, the series is 2-2, so we'll see what the series will be going into there. Robert, we'll start with you.
Well, I'm going to take the Lakers tonight, which would make it 3-1. I don't know. With the recording ahead of time, I'm like, okay. But I'm going to take the Rockets in Game 5 to make it a 3-2 series. So I think the Lakers are going to win this in 6 games. And to retroactively do that, I'll have to take the Lakers tonight and then Rockets in the Saturday game.
So if you're watching this live tomorrow,
Thursday, I meant Thursday.
You already know whether Robert was right in the first game. But Game
Yes.
5, Adam, who do you have?
Yeah, this is super painful as a Houston fan, but I've got the Lakers in this one. I don't know what the series is going to be, 2-2 or 3-1 or whatever. We'll see how the night goes. But I think the Lakers are simply just a team on a mission. I think, playing for Kobe Bryant, I think with LeBron and AD, and then like Robert said, the emergence of Rajon Rondo with him returning, I think this Laker team is just, too full steam ahead for the Rockets to stop. We've seen the Rockets also some questionable three-point shooting. percentage. We saw them kind of fall off against the Warriors a couple of years ago when they missed 26, 27 straight. So I think the Lakers, led by LeBron and AD, they get by this one. They set up an all LA matchup in the Western Conference Finals.
Yeah, I'm going with LA too. I've been waiting on that LA matchup in the Western Conference Finals, and I completely agree with you. Lakers are on a mission. They seem to be finding their groove right now. Robert, your surprise player Rajon Rondo is really playing some of his best basketball right now. I got the Lakers in this one. Now let's go college football. We're moving to spread predictions. We're starting off number 1 Clemson, 33-point favorite at Wake Forest. Adam, who do you have?
That's a big, big spread. But Clemson has Trevor Lawrence, the best quarterback in college football. So I think they're actually going to come out and cover. I think Dabo Swinney, he does a great job. He's going to fire his players up. They're going to be ready to play. And Wake Forest is going to be an empty stadium there in Winston-Salem. So I think this gives Clemson a big advantage in this one. I think that, they'll get out by a couple scores. I think that they'll have enough to get by the Demon Deacons by more than 33.
Robert, what about you?
Yeah, I wrote down Wake Forest, but I mean, just looking at the spread and thinking about the picks I've made in the past against Clemson and massive spreads, I'm just going to have to take Trevor Lawrence on this one. He covers massive spreads. He is very good at covering. If there's a 70-point spread, I think there's a 20% chance that Trevor Lawrence could actually cover it. He's incredible with huge spreads. I think they're going to cover for sure.
Good picks by both of y'all. Clemson, they're coming into this season on a mission, I should say. They lost the national championship game last year, and even the whole season, they just weren't exactly what we thought they were going to be. Trevor Lawrence was a little underwhelming. They're going to come back on a mission. Trevor Lawrence has been tweeting all week. He's excited for this game. I think they easily cover this spread. Next game we have, battle of some of the worst teams playing college football right now. So we had to pick the spread. We had to do it. Kansas, 7-point favorites against Coastal Carolina. Robert,
I would not mark out the Jayhawks this year besides this game because I'm taking Coastal Carolina. I think Kansas is not looking good at all. I could foresee an 0-10 season this year, even with Les Miles. I just don't know how this program is going to respond. Coastal Carolina, no slouch. I think Coastal Carolina has a lot of talent. I think they could come in and surprise. So I'm going to actually take the upset pick a little bit here and try to gain one on you guys, and I'm going to go with Coastal Carolina.
By you saying that you're going to gain one, you're assuming we're going to pick opposite you, but we'll see. Adam?
Ooh.
Yeah, not so fast, Robert. I'm going to fall right into his trap. I'm going to go with the Jayhawks. Kansas lost to Coastal Carolina 12-7 a year ago. Les Miles is making sure it doesn't happen 2 years in a row. Puka Williams has a big game, and the Jayhawks pull away. They win by a 10-2 touchdown game, so they cover and win against the Chanticleers.
That's my analysis, too. I'm going with Kansas. Up next, Florida State, 12.5-point favorite, home against Georgia Tech. Adam, who you got?
Well, the Mike Norvell era begins at Florida State. This is a Georgia Tech team that went 3-9 last year and lost to the Citadel. I think Florida State takes care of business at home. They win by at least 2 touchdowns. They're on the road, but they take care of business and they cover against Georgia Tech to start off Mike Norvell era.
Robert?
Georgia Tech did go 3-9 last year, ugly loss to the Citadel, but I will mention they were changing from their archaic offense to a more modern one. I think this year they're going to see some improvement. However, not enough improvement to stay within 2 scores of Florida State. I'm going to agree with you on this one. Florida State at home, just too much for Georgia Tech.
I'm going to agree, too. I didn't do half the research that you did, Adam, but it sounds really good. So I got Florida State winning this game.
I had the opposite team. He convinced me.
Up next, number 10, Notre Dame, 20-point favorites against Duke. Battle of the smart schools. Robert, who you got?
Well, this one's Notre Dame for sure. I think Notre Dame has a great opportunity this year being a de facto member of the Atlantic Coastal Conference, something that they vowed they would never do. But I think they're going to, play their hearts out. And I think they're more than capable of beating Duke by 3 scores. I think they're going to do that for sure.
Adam?
Yeah, Duke's definitely a new quarterback, a transfer from Clemson. So I think Notre Dame, with the experience of Ian Book at quarterback, they'll definitely win this one. I think they'll cover 2. And I think they're a team to watch out the ACC. I think they could be a playoff sleeper by the end of the year.
Man, I was just about to pick Duke to cover. I didn't know that they had a transfer. Did you say transfer freshman quarterback?
Transferring from Clemson.
Oh, transfer from Clemson. You know what? I'm going to go with Duke. Duke's going to cover. I'm sticking with my original thought. Up next, this is our game. Number 14, Texas. The line is currently 43 points even, hosting UTEP. We heard from Isaiah. I think his prediction was 42-21. But Adam, we'll start with you. Can Texas cover this enormous spread?
There's one thing that Texas is really good at, and it's making games more interesting than they should. They always play down to the level of their opposition. So I don't think there's any way they'll get to 43 points. I think they'll win this one by probably 4 to 5 scores, but I don't think they're covering 43 points, not in the season where they've had less practice and are coming into a new normal.
Robert?
Yeah, I'm sorry to our esteemed guest, Isaiah, but I don't see UTEP making this one close. But like Adam said, Texas does have a little bit of a habit of making games close. And with that information and with that knowledge, with just being a Texas fan for a couple of years, I don't know what the bookies have in terms of information to make Texas a 43-point favorite. I know UTEP is one of the worst teams in the FBS, but still a 43 points. That's a lot to cover. I don't think that Texas will necessarily even be looking to do that, seeing as they have 9 pretty tough conference games on their slate. I think, you want to get some experience for the guys that typically you spread it out over 3 non-conference games. Now you only have 1. So I think it'll probably be, like Adam said, around 28-point game.
Guys, I had to grab a pencil off my desk because this is a giant double not so fast. UTEP was trailing against Stephen F. Austin in the first half. They struggled to put them away. You said Texas has a knack for close games, but they beat Louisiana Tech, who ended up being a really good team last year, by 38 points. They took the kickoff at the end of the game against Rice to cover that big spread. And this Texas team, the one that's going to finish number 3 in the college football playoff, according to my predictions, they're coming out swinging. They're winning. Let's not even say 43. I'm saying 50. Texas is winning this game big.
That's a lot. I mean, they needed a field goal from Cameron Dicker to beat Kansas last year. So I don't know if they're going to beat UTEP by 43. But that's a bold 50 points.
New year.
A 50 burger.
They're going to cover the spread. Let's head to the NFL. Sunday night game, America's team, Dallas Cowboys, 3-point favorite, traveling to Los Angeles to play the Los Angeles Rams. Adam, we'll start with you.
How about them Cowboys? I think the Cowboys are going to cover this one. I think with the offensive talent they've assembled, you got Zeke leading the backfield and the 3 key receivers, Gallup, Cooper, and Lamb. I think that's enough for the Cowboys. They'll be able to outscore the Rams in this one and cover the 3-point spread.
Robert?
It's like we said, or you said at the top of the show, the very top of the show, we're back. We're talking about the Cowboys. And once again, I'm sorry, but I'm going to have to pick them again. I don't enjoy doing it, but the Cowboys have too much offensive momentum. Dak Prescott is back, and he's going to lay the hurt on the Los Angeles Rams, who I think will have a little bit of a Super Bowl hangover. So I'm going to take the Cowboys week 1, even though it's on the road, not much of an environment in LA with everything going on. I got the Cowboys.
No, not so fast for me. I almost gave it, but here's the deal. Sean McVay's a great coach. He's going to figure things out in Los Angeles, but they got a lot of questions that they need to figure out. Week 1, they're not going to do it. The Cowboys have a lot of things put together better. They're bringing in a new receiver with CeeDee Lamb. Dak is back in the backfield. I think the Cowboys win this. And as much as y'all know that I like to talk bad against the Cowboys, I think the Cowboys are a playoff team this year.
We'll see. We'll see.
That debate for another time. That's all the time we have, though, for this show. Thanks again. It's been 6 months. We're so glad that you could finally come back, get to hear our predictions, get to hear our crazy takes. But thanks for joining us. Make sure to tune in College Press Box Monday nights. College Crossfire is on Wednesday nights. And for all of us, virtually in studio, virtually in Mash Control, have a good weekend.